went up to the side of it and I hammered on it twice. Ours was about the 50th of about 75 plowshare disarmament actions, and I trained for this for 10 years. And the soldiers came at us with machine guns, and they had orders to shoot on sight, you know. And I said, we're unarmed, peaceful people. We mean you no harm. We're just here to dismantle this weapon of death. Name was perfectly reasonable thing to say. And you think they're going to say, oh, what were we thinking? Thank you for coming. Go right ahead. But that didn't happen. As I told the judge later, Your Honor, we were just following the prophet Isaiah, who said, you know, someday you're going to beat their swords into plowshares and study war no more. I was just trying to obey Jesus, who gave us the famous commandment. Love your enemies, don't nuke them. That's the actual translation from the Greek. That didn't go over well either. For that act, I faced 20 years in prison, spent about 9 months in a cell and never left the cell. I could go on and on about that. I was found guilty of 2 felony counts. So now I'm an ex-con, can't vote, regularly monitored by the government. I feel it all the time. And I feel like I'm being excommunicated from the empire. And I'm trying, like you, to walk in my journey, I'm just sharing my journey, to walk in solidarity with the disfranchised of the earth, protesting war and nuclear weapons. For me, that means crossing the line, and that's why I've been arrested about 75 times. For me, it's now like getting like a way of life. The last 9 years, I live in New Mexico, one of the poorest places in the U.S. I'm currently the pastor of a small, poor parish right on the Mexican border, and we have a campaign to disarm Los Alamos, which is the birthplace of the bomb, and business is booming. I'm just sharing it here with you. About 2 years ago, I was on a very strict probation from the federal government. I've been thinking about it being here again because I was not allowed to leave the state without permission, or to travel, basically, and had to report every week with the federal authorities. And they were coming to my house where I live often. Last year, I was determined to get into Gaza, so I went with a Gaza Freedom March. 1,400 of us went to Cairo. We were going to march to Gaza. And the hour we all arrived to gather together, Mubarak shut the whole thing down, declared curfew, no meetings of larger than 3 people. So all 1,400 of us around the world took to Tahrir Square for 10 days and did non-stop demonstrations. We were pushed around and beat up and so forth. And Hedy Epstein and myself, she's an 85-year-old Jewish Holocaust survivor, began an 8-day fast sitting on the steps of the National Syndicate, the press government building in Cairo. Incredible experience. About a year ago, 14 of us walked onto Creech Air Force Base. This is the future of the empire. The headquarters of the drones. Unmanned aerial bombers, these huge black planes that with no people on them that are full of gasoline, bombs, and cameras. And the U.S. has them all over Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Yemen, Mexico border. I fear they'll be here soon over your skies. And we knelt down and said no to the drones, and we were arrested and thrown into the Las Vegas city jail, and we had a big trial in the fall, which was incredible, and the judge said, well, I need 4 months to go off and think about this. So 2 weeks ago, I was just back in court for the day, and the judge, of course, said, you're all guilty. And I thought, for sure, I was getting 6 months in prison. There was no way I was going to be here. And he found me guilty, but he gave me time served. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm very happy to be here with you. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, if today you had known the things that make for peace. I've been thinking about that. We've been talking about empire, the American empire, the Israeli empire, the occupation, the wall, the settlements, the siege of Gaza, the apartheid, the abominable Obama veto of the UN, all of this in a world where the United States has 730 military bases around the planet. The UN has announced that there are 1 billion people starving to death. Not hungry. Read it, look it up. Starving to death. 30 wars, 25,000 nuclear weapons, violence, torture, executions, economic collapse, destructive policies that have brought us catastrophic climate change. We're up to our ears in empire, It's the air we breathe. It's normal. It's legitimate. It's internalized. And we put the church, as we've been saying all week, in theology and spirituality at the service of empire. So I think if we're going to talk about a spirituality of resistance, as we've been saying, I just put it on the record, we have to first recognize that most of us practice a spirituality of empire, spirituality of occupation, a spirituality of war. This is what we're dealing with in the United States. And it's an old story. In the spirituality of empire, you say, violence saves us. War brings peace. Might makes right. Nuclear weapons, as the Archbishop told me recently of Los Alamos, are our only security. God blesses wars. We do not seek forgiveness or reconciliation, but victory and domination. The good news is not love your enemies, but the elimination of the enemies so we can steal their land and natural resources for ourselves, so forth and so on. And we think the empire's on our side, gives us life. It's our God. But of course it brings good things to death. I think the history is, by and large, especially as we've heard from Richard and Ched and so many of the others, we've rejected Jesus' call out of empire. And the Sermon on the Mount is impractical. Taken up the empire's just war theory. Actually, Constantine, as I study it, turned to Cicero for that. Launched the Crusades, and now we bless the nuclear weapons at Los Alamos. And the empire is trying to teach us, as people of faith, about God and life, to instruct the churches how to be church, to give us the theology and spirituality, to answer the questions of sin and morality, and we let them, and telling us what is sin or immoral or what issues to talk about while saying nothing, for example, about the occupation or the mass murder of 1 million Iraqis by the Americans, as if this wasn't the definition of mortal sin. The empire wants us to be indifferent, passive, silent, maybe divided, fighting among ourselves, ideally blessing our wars, occupations, and justice. Have a private relationship with your imperial God, do your Sunday obligations, and go along silently with the mass murder of sisters and brothers around the world. As Ched said so well, we're possessed with the imperial occupation of our souls and spirits and hearts. Now, in the old days, they had these big $10 words for this kind of thing. They called it heresy, blasphemy, idolatry. I think we got to reclaim those words. And Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. King and Dorothy Day and others come along and they say, we live in a whole new moment. We're really getting it now. This violence doesn't work. War doesn't work. Violence in response to violence leads to never-ending violence. Gandhi said an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Someone said those who live by the sword die by the sword. You reap what you sow, the means of the end. What goes around comes around. War can't stop terrorism because war is terrorism. War only sows the seeds for future wars. War never leads to lasting peace or true security or a better world or overcome evil or teach us how to be human, much less helping us to deepen the spiritual life, if you will. So if we're on the journey for peace, we're denouncing the lie of war and empire and the false spirituality of war and empire. We have to say, war and empire are not the will of God. War and empire are never blessed by God. War and empire are never justified. They are the definition of mortal sin, idolatry, demonic, anti-life, anti-human, anti-God, anti-Christ. Solomon, how am I doing? Is this okay? Okay. Peaceful means are the only way to a peaceful future. I wanted to say all that, and now I want to just kind of put that on the record, propose these 10 little points which I've come up with. And they may not be yours, and that's totally fine, and they're just starting points to stir your own reflections about this morning's topic after this great week. What is your spirituality of nonviolence and resistance? What sustains you in this struggle? And friends, we're all friends after a week. If this is not okay, if it's not helpful, if it's not making you feel good, please go get some more coffee or go for a walk. We're all very nonviolent here. So here goes. First, our spiritual